Fear Not, Episode 42. Hi, I'm Billy Atwell, and I believe that consistently facing your fears is the only way to realize your truest self and to make those confident choices that will help you to obtain your deepest held hopes and dreams. I have faith that this podcast series will show you that you are not alone, that it will strengthen you and give you courage to face your fears, and that it will help you to permanently cross over into a life of living beyond your fears. Join me on this journey as we listen and learn from others as they share their experiences in facing and overcoming their own fears. Hello, everybody. Today you and I are going to be joined by Alexandria Kuykendall. Hello, Alex. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks.
Are you ready to fear not?
I'm ready. Yes.
A trusted voice in mothering circles, Alex speaks to women around the world about issues of parenting, faith, and identity. She is the author of Living My Actual Life, an experiment in relishing what's right in front of me. She is also a blogger, public speaker, and actively involved with MOPS, Mothers of Preschoolers International. Alex lives in the shadows of downtown Denver with her husband Derek and their 4 daughters who range in age from 5 to 14. Alex, can you take a few minutes just to sort of fill in the gap and maybe give us an additional brief glimpse of your personal life?
Sure. So I have 4 children. That just says a lot right there. And they're at 3 different schools. So my days are a lot of driving, jumping in the car, driving to a school, picking someone up, dropping someone off, and then trying to come home and write words down for books and blog posts and all of that. In very chopped up kinds of days. So that is what a typical day looks like for me. I'm a terrible housekeeper. I love raising girls. And my husband is the executive director of Providence Network here in Denver, which provides transitional housing to people coming out of homelessness. So a big part of our family's life is supporting him as he does that, as he helps create families in homes for people that are needing a place to lay their heads.
Alex, would you share with us today one of the biggest fears that you've had to face?
Sure. I think as a mom, as a parent, I have really had a lot of fear around my children's safety. We think when someone hands us a baby that it's going to be this magical moment, and there is part of that. But there is also complete fear that somehow we're going to mess up this person or something is going to happen to this tiny being that we now love so much. As moms, when we get a child, whether it's through adoption or birth or marriage, and we step into motherhood, all of a sudden we have this intense love for somebody else that truly is our taste of what unconditional love feels like. Because even with my husband, I often put conditions on our relationship. But with your child, just the nature of being a parent, we experience this unconditional love. So the thought of something happening to one of my children is probably to this day what causes me the most fear.
So what do you do to continually address, face, and overcome this fear?
It's, I think, a daily struggle for parents. I'll speak specifically to moms since I am a mom, and I tend to fall on the emotional end of the spectrum. So I may be a stereotypical woman that way. I can rationalize a lot of things, but I also have this emotional side of me that is a very real part of me, and it comes out in different ways. I can give you maybe an example of a time in the last year when I felt very afraid. And it's a little bit of an extreme example, but I think our fears, even our ones that feel irrational, are usually based in at least a little bit of truth.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
So we live here in the city. Our kids go to Denver public schools, which we love. We love the diversity of the student body. the diversity of our neighborhood. We feel like it's a way to bring our children to the world by being in a community that reflects the world. So it's not a bubble. That's not our hope. And yet we have to balance that with the safety issues. So I was driving to school about 15 months ago. And I had my youngest daughter, who was then 4 at the time, asleep in the back seat. She was strapped into her car seat. And I was headed to the elementary school to pick up 2 of my girls from elementary school. So it was pickup time. So a lot of parents were headed in that same direction. And when I was about 3 blocks away from the school, I was coming down a hill, and the school was towards the bottom of the hill. And I could see some police lights near the school. And so I thought, okay, that's not good. And the closer I got, the more lights I could see. Like, this was a real situation. And when I was about a block away, I realized I couldn't drive any further because the police had a barricade there, stopping people from driving any closer to the action. And it looked like there was an action happening either at the school or right outside the school. Well, by this point, I was having physical reactions. Like, I was having a hard time breathing. Every possible awful school shooting story was running through my brain. And I had a child in the car with me too. And so I knew somebody who lived right on the intersection where I was stopped, and she was on her front porch. She also had kids at the school, and she also had a 4-year-old daughter who was with her on the porch. And she had her phone in her hand and was looking towards the school. And then she looked at me, and I said, "Do you know what's going on?" And really, I could barely get the words out because my panic had gone from 0 to 100, because it looked to me like there were 15 police cars right there. And obviously something was happening because they weren't letting us approach the building. And she said, "The kids are safe. They're in lockdown," which, our kids are a lot. It's just part of their life. And she said, "But there's an active shooter in the neighborhood." And right as she finished that sentence, we heard gunfire, like a series of shots.
Wow.
And I can tell you, I have never been so afraid in my entire life. And I had this 4-year-old with me. So I pulled her out of the car. I ran into this woman's house, and I fell on the floor, really my face on the floor, and I started praying. And here's the thing. I knew all those stories that didn't end well. I know that parents all over the world pray for the safety of their children, and God doesn't always answer prayers the way that we want them to. So am I going to be the mother today whose prayer is answered the way I want? I don't know. I truly don't. But what I do know, and what I knew in that moment, is that God was with me, and that his character does not change. He is good and loving and reliable. And so I prayed, "God, I know you're with me now. I know you are with all of my children, wherever they are in this neighborhood right this moment. Be with us." And of course, I asked for his protection. That's what I wanted. And he wants us to ask for what we want. So I asked for his protection, but I also knew he doesn't always answer prayers the way we want. But what I could rely on is who he is. And so fighting my fears, sometimes they are based in truth. And I want to talk a little bit too about kind of irrational parenting fears, because we can live in constant fear, and that is not good. We have to recognize that our fears are based in truth, assess how likely is this to happen, and then push through anyway. Because our best fight, I think, in this life against our parenting fears is to continue to let our children be in the world and live in the world. Because we can't keep them in a bubble. We don't want to put them in harm's way on purpose. And yet we have to step over those fears as their parents, or we'll suffocate them.
So would you mind talking about some of the irrational fears and maybe addressing that to the listener today?
Sure. I think, so take this example. You would think, well, that's kind of an irrational fear that there's going to be guns at your child's school. And statistically speaking, that is unlikely, and yet it happened to me. And so that can start to open up a whole list of fears. So I would say typically to a person, you don't need to worry about that because there are thousands of schools in our country, and this is so rare that something like this would happen. And in this particular case, the shooting itself had no relation to the school. It just happened that a chase ended right there, a police chase, and someone was killed right there in front of the school. Complete coincidence, and yet it happened. So I would say irrational fears are things like, if we go swimming, then my child's going to drown. Like this automatic, if this, then this is going to happen. If I let my child play in the front yard, then they're going to get snatched. It's this automatic, this behavior will lead to this. Now, again, I live in the city, so I am mindful. If my children are playing in the front yard, my rule is I need to be able to see you if I look out the kitchen window. You have to be within view. So it's taking that fear and saying, okay, there's a small chance that there's a safety issue here. I am much more concerned about them being hit by a car in the front than I am about them being snatched. But I think people have those fears. And it's stepping over it and saying, okay, I'm going to make a rational decision here. And I'm going to recognize that this is highly unlikely. And I'm also going to recognize that I'm afraid, and I'm going to choose to step over the fear. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very much so. Alex, do you have resources that you could share with us, books or anything like that you've read that can help us to get to that point of analyzing the fear and coming up with a rational thought?
Yes. One of the people I like to follow is Lenore. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. It's spelled Skenazy. She has a website, and all of her social media stuff is under the name of Free Range Kids. And she's really a person who is on the national level pushing to let kids live kind of normal lives without helicopter parents following them around, with the idea that in order to prepare kids to be independent adults, we have to give them pieces of independence along the way. So her site will often point out the ridiculous. Like I looked at it this morning, and it had a picture of a sign that said, no unattended children in the restroom under the age of 12. And so the question is, really, does a child need to be 13 to be able to go to the bathroom by themselves? Probably not. I mean, my children can manage their own potty by the time they're 4. And then to be able to go into a public restroom, they can go at 7. I send my girls in with a buddy typically, but by the time they're 8 or 9, they can go in there by themselves. And so it's really recognizing when you see a fear that somebody else is pushing on us as parents, which I think we often get the pressure, like, you're supposed to be afraid of this. You're supposed to be afraid of public restrooms, to then recognize it as a little bit ridiculous. And that helps us step over the fear. So I would say check out her site, Free Range Kids. And then there is a book by Susie Davis that I have not read myself, but I have friends who have read it and said it has really helped them in their own fears for their children and letting go, and especially having to go to school and all of that. And that is Unafraid is the name of the book, and that's by Susie Davis. And that is a faith-based book, just so listeners know that.
Are you ready for the speed round?
I am ready.
What individual, whether they be fictional or real, has made the most impact on your life?
Well, I mean, I think my interview shows already that I'm a person of faith. So Jesus as a person has definitely had the most impact on me, fully human and fully divine. His teaching, but also his life and his death are by far the most impactful that I have had. As far as like mere mortals, only a person and not God himself. it's hard to pinpoint one person. My mom was very influential for me, and my husband has been a great support for me as I've come into my own as an adult and as he's partnered with me. So I'd say my mom and my husband have been pretty significant too.
If you could instantly change one thing in the world, what change would that be?
I like this question a lot. It's like you can have a superpower to do one thing. And right now, I would say that I wish we would recognize each other's humanity more. That when we see somebody who has a different opinion than us, who's living life differently than we are, who's making choices that are different than ours, that instead of putting them in a category of person, this is a person who believes this way, votes this way, whatever the categories are, that we would simply see them as a person made in God's image.
What's your biggest weakness?
Oh, geez, my biggest weakness. Well, I kind of opened with it. I'm a terrible housekeeper. I will, that's a pretty shallow weakness. I mean, I've got some major internal weaknesses. But as far as something that I wish I could get a better handle on, and I've been working at it for a long time, is the ability to organize my home and my stuff. I just can't seem to get it together on that.
What's your biggest strength?
I work hard at that humanity piece. And because of that, I make connections really easily with people. Not so much me personally, but I can see, oh, this person is similar to this person and they should be introduced. Or this person has similar, whether it's interests or life experience or personality traits or beliefs. In my mind, I begin to connect people. And I think that connection helps me make literal introductions, but it also helps me remember how similar people are.
If you can only have one book to read, what book is that going to be?
Oh, well, I don't mean to be the Christian Bible beater, but I am going to say the Bible because it sustains me in a way that other books don't.
Do you have a favorite sound?
A favorite sound, for sure, my children laughing.
And Alex, if someone would like to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, probably my website, which is my name, alexandrakuykendall.com, and it's spelled kind of funny. My last name is spelled Kuykendall.
And what parting of advice would you like to leave with us today?
Parting advice, I guess, to trust that God does not change. Because if we believe in who he says he is, then the circumstances around us, which we know are going to change from day to day and year to year, that up and down flexing and roller coaster of life is a little more manageable, knowing that there is at least one constant in the world.
That's really great advice, and thank you so much for sharing that. And I also want to let everyone know, too, that Alex has generously donated a copy of her book, Living My Actual Life. And if you would like an opportunity to win, visit the giveaways page at livingbeyondyourfears.com and submit your free entry form today. Alex, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been really great talking to you. It's been a pleasure meeting you, and I hope you come on the show again.
Thanks, Billy.
Thank you for joining me today. And remember, you cannot achieve everything, but you do have the God-given ability to achieve anything. So stay focused, out of fear, and keep on keeping on. Until next time, be well and peaceful. For more information on today's episode and guest, or for resources that will assist you in overcoming your fears, visit livingbeyondyourfears.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, where 3 times a week we move to a life beyond our fears.